Hello and welcome to the year we started a podcast. It's a podcast born Phoenix-like from the prior year's podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff.
And I am your co-kickback, Nick.
Gosh dang. You stole it. You stole it.
I took it.
And this is our podcast where a couple friends half a continent apart that want to come together and talk about some of the things that are fun and interesting to us. And Nick, today, this is what I was going to use. And today, I would like to kick back and tell you a story.
Let's kick back, man. I'm already there.
Okay, Nick. How involved were you in the ongoings on the behind the scenes things in 1998 NFL pop culture?
98. I think the Packers and the Vikings played at some point in that year, and that is about everything that I know about football. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So the story I want to start us off with this week is what I consider to be maybe one of the best NFL stories of all time, but perhaps the most entertaining sports anecdote of all time. In the late 90s, the Chiefs had a bit of a quarterback controversy. We had Rich Gannon and Elvis Grbac as our quarterback during those late 90s years. Elvis Grbac was the younger kid, perhaps a little bit more promising, although not all that much so. He was our starter, and we had Rich Gannon as our backup quarterback during that time. Elvis Grbac got hurt a few different times, and also before Elvis Grbac, we actually had another quarterback who just kind of sucked, and we had Rich Gannon come in off the bench and fill in. And every time Rich Gannon would come in, he would do really well, and so it was kind of a bit of a quarterback controversy going into, I don't know, maybe it was like the 97-ish season, give or take a year or two. Going into that season, we had Elvis Grbac as a starter. He got hurt. I think he broke his collarbone or something. Ended up coming back, I think, late in the season or early playoffs, and it was like a big controversy whether or not we were going to keep playing Rich Gannon, who had played really well during that time, or if we were going to start the younger kid at quarterback. Anyways, none of that is actually relevant to the story other than there was a quarterback controversy. The older Gannon was a bit more popular amongst fans at the time. I do remember this time as a fan, even though I was 9-10 years old or whatever. It was an interesting time to be a Chiefs fan. However, none of those facts were as interesting as what happened. I think it was the offseason of 1998. Where one of the major sports publications were naming their sexiest sports player of the year. And
Gannon has a very classic, he reminds me of a 90s sitcom guy, except kind of buffer probably, right? So I'm sorry,
honestly,
I'm assuming.
No, Gannon, honestly, if you look him up on Google Images back in the 1998 season or somewhere around there, he kind of looks like a slightly more athletic Ryan Reynolds a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, not a bad looking dude. So what happened was the publisher, editor, or whatever, they said that the person they were going to name as the sexiest sports person alive in 1998 was going to be the Chiefs quarterback in the middle of a quarterback controversy. And the photo team and the interview team, they went out and they went out and they interviewed Elvis Grbac, who, he's a good old country boy. He's not exactly the best looker.
I don't know Elvis Grbac. I think this might be the first time I've associated the name. So.
No, it's okay. Nothing special, nothing bad. Just he's literally the most stereotypical white 30-year-old male ever back in the 1990s. But anyways, he was who they flew out and interviewed. They did the interview, they did the photo shoot, and nobody really realized what had happened until it got back to the publisher, and they're like, "Wait, this is the guy we chose as our sexiest athlete of 1998? This is the guy?"
There had been a mix-up.
So. Yeah, turns out they figured out what they had done, and they did not have the heart to tell.
I was gonna
Elvis
say, how do you like let that? Oh man, that'd be awkward.
They did not have the heart in the moment to tell Elvis Gerbach that they had made the mistake, and so they just went with it. And here, let me pull this up. So the title of this article is "The Sad, Hilarious Tale of Elvis Gerbach, 1998's Sexiest Athlete Alive." And again, this is like published in the early, or in the yachts, which I love going back to the internet back, pre 2010. It was an interesting time. Anyways, okay, I'm gonna read the last bit of this article. The pictures made their way back to the New York offices, and the editors were dumbfounded. This was their sexiest athlete. Yet, upon learning the truth, no one with the magazine had the heart to tell Gerbach the unfathomable mistake that had been made. As a result, Elvis Gerbach reigns as People's 1998 sexiest athlete. The article's final line is is what says it all. His personality is what makes him sexy. Which I don't know how long this guy. I don't know how long this went unpublicized, the fact that this was a mix-up, but I freaking love it.
Oh my god!
To add insult to injury, Nick, because we're recording this prior to the Chiefs' first playoff game of 2021, of which this will release after that happens. So either I will be very sad or very happy / very nervous for the next game. Rich Gannon would go on after this to go play for our rival Raiders and become the NFL MVP. So I think not only did we make the wrong choice on the sexiest athlete, I think we maybe made the wrong choice of who should have been our starting quarterback.
Hard to say. One was MVP, you say. Okay.
Yeah.
Tough to say.
Yeah.
The M in MVP is most, right?
It is.
It's unfortunate. It's funny that you say that, because I lived in the East Bay, in this small town in the East Bay, when Gannon was... I think I came in right as Gannon came to the Raiders. And the reason I say is that... so as a kid, I was very young when Gannon was on the Raiders. I think you probably retired when I was pretty young too. But as a kid, I moved there, and I just felt like everyone in that town just thought everyone on their local teams was the greatest of all time. I was like this freaking kid from Southern California who didn't know anything about anything with sports. And like, I still, don't know anything about some sports. But it was like, oh yeah, okay, Mike Bibby's so good, and Rich Gannon and Barry Bonds, I'm sure they're all great. And then like you get a couple years removed and actually learn about like, oh, Barry Bonds was really good. I'm sure he had some steroid things, but he was really good. And also, so was Rich Gannon. And it's like a 10-year-old. I'm over there like, whatever, man. Look, Kobe is the best. Shaq's the best. You guys are dumb. That's all I care.
I didn't even hear you lift up the rug to sweep under the Barry Bonds steroid stuff.
I did it pretty discreetly. I tried. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into some of the topics we have this week. Nick, I have some follow-up from our episode last week. However, the both pieces of follow-up are from a segment that I cut out of last week's podcast because it wasn't particularly interesting. So,
okay, yep.
I feel like this might be making podcast history. So, since I cut it out, I feel like I need to give a little bit of a summary of
probably. Otherwise, you'll just be talking like a crazy person. It's just about. Yeah. So everyone here remembers when we talked about wrestling, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I wish I really had a good wrestling, like a WWE anecdote to tell right after you said that, but I didn't have anything. So
can I, as somebody who doesn't watch wrestling, can I just tell you that wrestling is freaking wild?
I don't really understand. Okay.
We'll deep dive that a different time. That is a different day.
Nope. We accidentally hit the fork in the road, Nick, and we went the wrong direction.
We did. That is on me. That is, if you ever have like a topic, this is what happens when you're with me, okay? Is if you bring up a topic in the second and you also say, some peripheral thing. I am over here ready to take that exit right away. Like, hold on, let's detour. Let's detour for a good hour on this random thing you brought up that you weren't getting at.
Okay, so Nick, you remember when we talked on maybe our Christmas episode or the episode before, where I had played Xbox in my closet for a month or so, and
as
then, like,
normal
rewrapped
children
it,
do,
as
normal children do. They sit in their closet alone and play.
So,
Madden.
and my mom listens to this podcast, so I feel, I don't know, I'm a little bit conflicted as to like where I draw the line as to what was them imposing this on me versus me pushing back on my interpreted rules. But I was into wrestling when I was like in I want to say, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade, because of the friends that I were around.
Wait, you took the detour. You're taking the detour?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's what I said. Like, we went the wrong way.
All right, go ahead, continue. Talk to me about wrestling. Okay.
So, oh man, it's so interesting. I haven't really thought about this in so long. This is kind of like the Call of the Void stuff, where like I hadn't even thought about the fact that I was so weird when I was a kid. So I had a room that had access to our attic, and I could climb up into it through like climbing on all of my closet little I don't know, terrace thing, like the things like the shelves of my closet.
Mm.
And so I could get up there, and that's where I had like an area where I had like a bunch of baseball cards and Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and probably other things too. I felt like I couldn't like publicly express my enjoyment of professional wrestling as my 11 or 12-year-old self actually felt. And so in my,
I wonder why.
In the attic, I had written out oh man, this is so weird.
When you start a story with "in the attic," I had written out, it's not going anywhere good.
No, it's not going anywhere good. Oh man, if there's ever anything I'm going to cut, it's definitely this. In wrestling stuff, there's like obviously lots of fans, and they have all their signs and stuff of their favorite wrestler. And so I kind of recreated like a stadium of like a WrestleMania stadium, like a WWE stadium, and I had written like all these different wrestlers' names on like posters, quote unquote, but they were like little note cards, and I had them like hung up around like the rafters in the ceiling. And it was like, thinking back, it's like the most cringy thing ever. But I just like, that was like, I'm like the least rebellious kid ever, but that was my rebellion. In the attic, I hung up all these WWE wrestler names in the rafters as if it was a WrestleMania stadium.
You had to live it out somehow, vicariously, right? Just somehow.
This is my rebellion.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Mom. We digress.
We digress. Okay, hold on. We're last thing on wrestling. Okay, last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you have any cousins, or like not necessarily cousins, I guess, but like, do you have any family that is like so far removed that you've only met them a couple of times?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I have like a second cousin who has a cousin on the other side who is like 7 or 8 years older than I am. And the reason I say is that I've only met this guy like twice, and I think it was in the same summer. Like I used to spend like a week or two with those second cousins in the summer sometimes growing up. And so one time we went and saw that cousin at his place while we were there, like me and all my sisters. And he knew my older sister a little bit better than me because, they're closer in age. But so I'm like 10 or 11, and this guy's like somewhere in the range of like 17 to 19 or something. And his room is just covered in freaking WWE wrestling posters. And both times we were there, that he and my cousins and and all he wanted to do was play a WWE, like, I want to say N64 game. Does that sound right? I feel like I know that there are other.
No. Me and my brother played this so much. I know exactly what you're talking
but
about.
this is the problem. Isn't just the game. Okay, so the game thing is funny in its own right. Like I can't dive down that. But this human being who is related to me, we have shared blood. I mean, like, it's that's not true. We don't have shared blood, but like we have shared family. Like, I occasionally hear about this person, like, oh, did you hear about so and so's getting married or whatever else? This is a human being whose entire identity to me is that he is into the WWE. My only interactions with him in my entire life, and it's all I can remember, and I feel really bad. But like, like he got married like a year ago, and I was like, what would I even say? I'm so glad I don't have Facebook, because I'd be like, hey, so good to hear from you. How's
How's
The
wrestling
Rock
going?
doing? Is he back? No? Okay. All right then.
Oh man, I would like to go on the record and say I do not currently follow wrestling. Like I feel like that needs to be said.
That's fair. I feel bad. This person is probably a totally fine person. My third cousin or 15th cousin or whatever the frick it is. But
if you're listening, you're probably fine. Because you found our podcast. And we can't possibly risk alienating anybody at this point, Nick. We need all we can get.
It's a bad business decision if we do.
Right.
Okay.
Oh man, and the hilarious thing is I could go even farther down this road, but I'm not.
We shall not. We are steering back towards the highway. Okay.
All right. Yep. Okay. Okay. I haven't explained what the part that I cut from last week's podcast was.
You've not.
Basically, I was making tortilla soup, and it had a way too hot jalapeno in that soup, and basically made my entire family suffer from coughing and sneezing and etc. And we had to make something else for the kids, and I did a bad job. Okay. Like that was apparently not that interesting thing because I thought it needed to be cut, but it did remind me of one of my favorite stories ever, which I hope this is interesting because otherwise I'm gonna have to cut this too. When I very first started at
the double cut story, that'd be a new one actually. Anyways, continue.
Right. The cutting room floor is gonna get really interesting. No, so when I was really probably like a year into my current role or my current job, so like I don't know, almost a decade ago, not quite, I was not a person that enjoyed spicy foods at all. Like I had no tolerance for it. I don't know why, but just growing up, we never really had spicy food.
Fair.
To the extent like when I was in my early 20s or late teens, like I wouldn't even eat like a jalapeno. Like if you have jalapenos at a game and you would have like nachos and cheese and jalapenos, like I wouldn't eat the jalapenos at all. Like it was just too hot for me. But I did start to, like when I met my wife's family, like I started to get more into spicy food because they were, and so I was really interested in like trying to like, push those limits. A friend of mine from work brought in a Carolina Reaper pepper one day when we had like a chili day at work, which I'm not sure if you're familiar, is quite hot.
I am actually, yeah.
I was kind of new to the department and I wanted to be involved in the shenanigans, and I'm not one to say no to probably anything. So I wanted to be one of the two people of us that tried the pepper. And I tried the pepper, Nick, and it was hotter than a jalapeno a little bit.
Oh, was it?
It was. And so here was my experience. I take a bite of the pepper, and we had like a half gallon of milk in our little mini fridge in our little area. And so me and a friend of mine, we both did it and immediately resorted to the milk. However, there were enough gallons of milk in the city of Wichita to solve this problem. Like at one point, I was just sitting with my head up in the air with milk just sitting in my mouth, like hoping that it would go away. At some point, I remember thinking, like, should we call 911? But the problem is, I don't think they could do anything about this. Like, there's, and what it ended up being was, like Nick, I'm not even joking. We did this right around lunch. We were getting ready to eat, and we did this before we ate. There was literally 0% chance I was going to eat any food after that.
No, yeah, it just ruins you. Yeah.
So for maybe the first 30 minutes, we were trying to cope with it by holding milk in our mouths, which like helped maybe a little bit, like 2% maybe. Finally gave up and just drooled into a red Solo cup for like 4 hours. At which point it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I like the image of you just.
And like, I say that very quickly, Nick. 4 hours is a really long time to drool into a cup.
It is. It's quite a long time.
And it wasn't like it was really like parts of it became funny like at certain points, but it's only funny for so long. You can only drool into a cup for so long before it stops becoming funny. I can't even express how terrible those 4 hours were. It finally started to get a little bit better, where like I felt like I could could actively, walk away from the cup without needing it to drool into. Like both of us just decided we needed to go home. Like it was too emotionally exhausting to continue the work day. Like there was no way we had already wasted like 4 hours. There was no way that we were going to be able to do any work. Like I felt so tired after all of that. So went home, survived, and lived to fight another day. However, from that experience, from then on, my tolerance for spicy food, like
you just burned all your taste buds off, dude.
Probably, but like it is like probably 100 times what it was before. Like not even remotely close.
Oh, have you gotten to dad status of spicy food? Is that a thing? Oh my god, it's not fair.
I don't know.
You had trial by combat and now trial by fire. And
I like when I go do Thai food stuff, like they always ask if you want it. If you're
like,
medium or
I'll
hot.
take the spiciest shit you got.
they say like, do you want it medium or hot or Thai hot? Which if you say Thai hot, it's like an insult to the chef. Like they're like, oh, you Americans, you have no idea. And so they make it unreasonably spicy. But like, and like I'm not saying that I necessarily enjoy it Thai hot, but I can certainly eat it still. Like I can hang a little bit. But that is hilarious because it literally was that one instance of I didn't even like jalapenos before, had a Carolina Reaper, and then was capable, like fast forward, like I sped up my taste buds ability to handle capsaicin, like 10 years of spicy food eating in about a 4-hour period. Which I did go home and I went straight to bed. Like I don't even know how else to explain like how exhausted I was other than that. Like it was absolutely draining to go through.
That's really good. That's brutal, honestly sounding. So I have not done anything that dumb. Because I've watched the fallout of a Carolina, or not a Carolina, a ghost pepper.
Yeah.
So okay, I've watched the fallout of a ghost pepper, which was interesting all its own. I won't like bore you with a long hot food story, but my boss once brought in a bag of those like ghost pepper chips, which are not as hot as ghost peppers, but like you've seen, yeah. So she brought in a couple, I think. She was this really like competitive woman, and she was very like and like just kind of like a fun trash talker, but you could never tell how much of it was like, are you actually like trying to have like a competition? Is there something going on? You know? And so she got into it with everybody, like, oh, you got to try it. We got to see how you react. We got to see how you do. Are you willing? Are you willing to try it? Are you willing to try it? Whatever else. I had like a cracked lip, and I distinctly remember this because I had like a single chip. We weren't having like everybody have like a whole bag. Everyone was just having like a chip, and people were reacting, and they were like having funny reactions, but nothing too crazy because it's not actually that as hot as a ghost pepper, right? But I distinctly remember having a bite, having a chip, feeling totally fine. I was like, that's hot, but it's not that hot. And then, because I had a cracked lip, I just, like, licked my lip. And I was like, no. Bad, no. Just, like, it was this instant moment of, like, oh, I'm good. Like, oh, no. Mistakes.
So funny you mentioned that. When I cooked the jalapeno, or I was cutting up the jalapeno from the part that I cut from last week's episode, I touched my hip. And like there was an outline of my finger on my hip.
Oh, for, weird!
Like 3 hours, it was burning. Like I've never had that happen. Apparently, hip skin is really sensitive. I guess.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, weird. It was really weird because like you always hear like touching your eye or worse, that sort of thing. But like, man, I had no idea that could happen just from random hip skin. Like I just had an imprint of my finger.
You know, as I'm thinking about it, like I feel like my hip skin has gotten like bruised and stuff and like scratched easier than other parts of my body, but I wonder why. That's weird. That's a weird spot to have sensitive skin for like a very
It's also a weird thing to say in general. I'm not sure I've ever said the sentence or said the word or phrase hip skin.
That's a normal thing that human beings say to each other all the time, and it's not inappropriate. Hip skin.
Yeah. I feel like we found the title of our episode this week.
Oh, I don't like that title.
Okay. So on the topic, though, of being a bad dad and cooking things that are way too spicy, it was really funny. It's like...
On the topic of being a bad dad, says the dad. Okay, great.
Yeah. We cut that from the episode, but then we proceeded to cook some enchiladas, my wife and I did, for our kids. And we got everything cut up, and like we're ready to eat dinner with the kids. And Alice, our youngest, had taken a bite of one of the enchiladas and was chewing it up. And she's like starting to talk a little bit. And our son took a bite also of the enchiladas and like threw it the hugest fit of like, Dad, this is way too spicy. And
Aw.
I'm like, Avon, come on. Like your little sister, she's 2 years old. Like she's not even 2 years old yet. She's eating it. Like, you're fine. And then literally as soon as I said that, she took it out of her mouth and threw it on the floor and said, yuck. Which like,
Alice told you, bro.
Alice did tell us, which is a very short story, but I just think that does kind of cement the sort of thing that me and my wife apparently do to our kids with regards to spicy food. So you missed out on the full story of trying to smoke out my family with a jalapeno, but that's right.
That's what that story was. Yeah, yeah. I was like trying to remember the jalapeno story, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I cooked it a whole lot. Nobody could breathe in our upstairs. That's how it went.
Good job. I got a random thing for you, Jeff. I got a random thing.
Oh, yeah, do it.
This is not important, but I just have been meaning to ask you about it. So do you know about why, like, Coke tastes... I don't know. Do you know why Coke tastes better at McDonald's?
Is it like where they have a higher level of like syrup stuff?
Yeah, they have like higher levels of syrup to offset the fact that they expect ice to melt, so that like once the ice starts to melt, and they do all this other stuff. The reason I say is that I have a problem and I can't find anything for it, or not a problem. I have like a brain problem. We've talked about flavored sparkling waters on this whole show before. So I actually have like a low key favorite that I don't recommend to people because it's very inconsistent, is LaCroix's limoncello. Not lemon, but like their limoncello. Half the time, it tastes like the most delicious lemon gelato you've ever had in your entire life. And you're like, this is 0 calories. This is God's gift to me.
Uh-huh.
I've found Nirvana. It's great. And then you take another sip, and it's like icy, watered down lemon. And that's it. Like it's like the shade of iced lemon or something. I don't know. Or like a glass of water that you're like, did someone once have a lemon in this glass? Like a different glass of water? And it's like it's a complete crapshoot, dude. It's like one can will be amazing and the other one won't. There's nothing to these damn cans, Jeff. I can't find anything.
So is it always like one can is good and one can is not? Or is it like
it is not the same? No, it is not one can halfway through. It is one can is great and one is like whatever.
That's wild. And like in the same purchase, like the same batch?
Yes, 100% the same purchase. It's actually infuriating. There's been a time where I've like wanted to throw one out and just go for there's been more times than one where I want to throw it out and just go to the next one. But I'm telling you, dude, I cannot figure out why. It is driving me insane. Because I can understand why, like, you get that Dr. Pepper in a glass bottle, and it's like, that's yada, 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 yada. Or like, ooh, this straw has a wider berth, or whatever. And, dude, there's nothing. There's no difference.
Okay, and we found the fork in the road to go off and talk about something that we didn't plan. So,
okay, talk to me.
Straws. I want your opinion on straws. This is a non-polarizing podcast. I feel like it's a safe space. You can be honest here.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on straws? Because I know you live out west and y'all like your paper straws out there.
I'll do paper straws. I don't think it tastes any significantly different. I also just don't really use straws very much. I honestly, I brought up the soda example, but I try not to drink soda, and that's the primary place where you'd have straws, I feel like. Yeah. And coffee and stuff, and we've already discussed that I'm a pleb and don't drink really like any coffee.
Okay, well, as per usual, you're a better person than me. I do still drink soft drinks and such. So,
Jeff, the only reason I don't is that I have the worst impulse control of any human being you've ever met. Like if I drink soda regularly, every single time that I went past a soda thing, when you go to check out at a grocery store or at a Best Buy or at a bookstore and there's a little thing of soda in the corner, like I would 100% every single time buy a soda without fail if I drink sodas. But I tell myself, I don't drink sodas. That's the only reason that I can stop.
Yeah. Though that totally makes sense because I'm the exact same way. I just don't do the part where I don't drink it.
Okay, good.
So good. at all points I fail along the way. So again, thanks for making me feel terrible, you jerk.
Just cut this out. Just cut out. If we cut it out, does that make you less mad at me?
What it doesn't change is my disappointment in myself, and I think that's most. I think it's most beneficial to leave in because I need to hear my own disappointment in my edit. Like I think that needs to be something that makes it through. Okay, what was I talking about? Straws, Nick. I think paper straws suck, and I understand environment is good, and we should environment good. But paper straws to me are not the answer. I also feel very strongly that metal straws are also crap. And I think this might be because I grew up in the plastic straw nirvana where we didn't care about our environment and only about how beverages tasted through them. I honestly, Nick, I would be more in favor of us finding like a permanent plastic straw that we carry around in our pocket or something more than having paper straws. I just don't like it. It's so weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just a getting used to it sort of thing.
I think so. Yeah, I do think. I think it's just getting used to it. Honestly.
Okay. Well, that was a short detour where you just tell me get over it.
Just get over it. No, I'm with you though. There's genuinely differences in how things taste when you're receiving them from a different way, right? Like from a different material. So I'm sure that there actually is, but I don't know.
When did the paper straw thing hit California?
Probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say.
Okay.
But it's not universal. It's I know that like the stereotype from the outside is that that California is just this liberal haven of like everywhere in the world is like they're telling you like, oh my god, you have a plastic piece of whatever. No, I don't know. It's you'll definitely find it, and especially if you look for the right places, you'll find like restaurants that don't use any plastic, or say if you want a straw, ask, and it will only be a plastic straw, or sorry, that'll only be a paper straw. And I think San Francisco had a paper straw policy a couple of years ago. San Francisco is a very niche case though, where it's like a really freaking packed city, right, and a city that's on the water, so they have like their own kinds of nonsense.
Like if you were to go to McDonald's, like
like you would 100% find a plastic straw. 100%.
Okay. So Nick, we're going to have some pretty awesome space things happening at the beginning of this year and toward the end of this year.
Nice.
But soonest to us is going to be the landing of the Perseverance rover. And I am definitely going to have to talk about it quite a bit as it gets closer or as it lands, and then the sort of science that it's doing. But I would like to talk a little bit about the Perseverance rover and how it's going to crash into the planet safely. Hopefully not crash into the planet. How it's going to land safely on the planet.
Yeah.
Here in about a month. I think it's February 18th or something like that. And I don't want every single week to be Jeff talks about the Perseverance rover, so I want to get into it early.
Good. Yeah. And then we'll follow up on it when it's about to land, or when it does land, or if anything eventful happens. Yeah.
And I think I mentioned on an early episode that I would absolutely cry, honestly, either direction what happens, and that still remains quite true. Like I can't tell you how invested in this this is my aside from podcasts, knowing how this thing is going is my hobby outside of all the other things in my life. Like I love reading up on how this is going and what all the sort of science this is. I'm such a fan of space exploration. This is definitely a thing close to my heart. Anyways, so I'm really interested in tracking what all is going to be happening with the Perseverance rover, and I think it would be fun to talk about what's going to be happening here in the next month.
Talk to me, yeah. Give me a timeline. I'm out of touch. I've told you before, but
yeah,
I this is one of those topics that like I want to follow. I kind of like ostensibly want to follow, and like I tell myself I do, but then I never end up checking in. So
yeah, and honestly, I don't do a great job, but it's really nice to have the accountability of checking in on these sort of things when I have a podcast to record. So
there you go.
Curiosity was the rover that we sent to Mars most recently, and it really paved the way to how this rover is going to land, and it's pretty freaking amazing how it does it. So it's called what do they call it? Like 7 minutes of terror or something like that, where there are a lot of things that happen from the time that the rover will be approaching the planet and when it touches ground safely, we hope. And the interesting thing about this, 7 minutes is how long it takes to go from the outer stretches of the atmosphere of Mars, or what little it has, to when it lands. And I'm not sure if you're up to date on your distances and the speed of light. That is about half as long as it actually takes data to get back to us from the start of that. Like, it takes about 14 minutes from stuff from that rover to make it back to Earth. So it has to be 100% autonomous, which I think is just absolutely wild.
Yeah, it is. It is. I did know that it had to be autonomous. I actually knew that it had to be autonomous because of the transfer of data. Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, and we'll probably get to it in a later episode, but there's a lot about this rover that's super cool, where it can make more of its decisions autonomously than any previous rover. Because it is like, well, obviously because of just technology and what it is today, but that greatly increases the amount of science that it can do if it doesn't have to wait for, us here on Earth to make decisions for it, that is capable, with today's technology, to just make those decisions on its own. So that's super cool. Probably get into that a little bit in another episode. So 7 minutes to go from the top of the atmosphere to the planet itself. There's a lot of crazy things that happen that I think are just absolutely fascinating. When it gets close to the planet, it will be entering the atmosphere going 30,000 miles per hour.
I'm checking really quick. Checking. Okay, that's pretty fast. Okay.
Yeah. To put it in perspective, Nick, I've flown to California and hung out with you and gone through, TSA and flown that direction after a stop or so. And I don't know, maybe it took 6 hours ish to get to probably where you were, maybe a little bit more. If I was going 30,000 miles an hour, it would take me a few minutes, 3 minutes to make it to where you were, which is quite fast from here in Kansas to
pretty good.
Coast. Yeah, so very fast. It will, as it is entering the atmosphere, it will be heating up to like 2,000 degrees Celsius, which is very hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, just the engineering that would need to go into taking an object launched from our planet to go to another planet, going 30,000 miles an hour plus, to then heat up to 2,000 degrees Celsius plus and land safely is absolutely ridiculous. So they have like the heat shield, which is what is able to, one, slow down the rover's spacecraft itself enough that it can do the next maneuvers, but two, also keep it from turning into a lump of coal that just crashes into Mars. Once it gets down to 1,000 miles per hour, which is still absolutely mind-bogglingly quick, the parachute pops and slows it down over the next couple minutes, I think, to 200 miles per hour, which again, you've driven in a car, Nick. 200 miles per hour is quite fast.
It's quite fast.
Yep. And once it's down to 200 miles per hour, it breaks off the parachutes, still going very quickly. At this point, it doesn't have the parachutes or the heat shield. It now is just the lander itself and the boosters, which then are going to slow down the spacecraft to the point that it can land safely on Mars. However, it is even more complicated than that. It's not like it's going to land safely from the boosters. If it were to do that, the boosters' thrust would kick up so much Martian dirt that it would like completely cover the rover, because it's so fine and dry. It like would make the rover completely unusable. So they can't land the rover that way. Instead, and you can look up clips of this online, it's absolutely mind-boggling that this is really a thing that happens and has already happened once and will happen again. The spacecraft drops the rover with the booster part drops the rover about I believe, I don't know, maybe 100 feet off the ground or something like that, so that it doesn't kick up too much dust. Like in a space crane style, like I don't even know how else to describe it. It like drops it like a crane floating over the air off these thrusters down to the ground, which is like, again, watch the video. I'll put a link in the show notes. Absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. It sounds super cool.
Like this little crane drops this thing down, it lets it land very like basically at 0 miles per hour, and then drops the cables and then launches itself off somewhere else to go crash in Mars, which the whole thing, like the fact that we are able to launch something off our stinking planet and fly to Mars at a bazillion miles per hour, slow down, heat shield, then switch to this sky crane thing, space crane thing that then lowers this thing down and then launches itself back to crash somewhere else. Like the whole thing is so wild. We're going to be landing in a huge crater that is like in the middle of where they talk about how it's kind of like the Missouri River, which is close to where I live, which is cool. But it's like if a huge impact happened close to the Missouri River and had this giant, huge lake fill up and flow out the other side of the river. That's where they're doing the landing to do all the reconnaissance of that area and do all the science there. Absolutely stinking cool. But even cooler than all of that is we are planning to, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, we're planning to take samples from Mars and put them in capsules, and they will be things that we have in a return mission that we will have in our next lander to be able to get these back into orbit and launched back to Earth. I don't even understand how that's even possible. I haven't even done the looking into how that's possible. But the fact, wild. Again, that we can go from this stinking rock to another rock in space and launch things back to our rock is just mind-boggling. We've just recently done this. This is one of my topics that I wanted to talk about at some point. We did this recently, or we're going to do this recently soon with an asteroid, which is cool enough in and of itself, but to do it like escaping the gravity of a planet is, I don't know, it's just wild. Like, I love so much honestly, Nick, in our lifetime, none of that actually matters. Like, we're not going to like greatly benefit from the science that's being done on other planets, almost certainly. But the curiosity of the human species, I can't help but get excited about that sort of thing. And so that's why come mid-February, when this thing is getting sky craned down to Mars, I will be at the absolute edge of my seat, knowing that there's literally nothing that we can do other than hope that our people at NASA have done a good job, and that this thing lands and can do the science that it has. There's 100 other things that are super cool about the things that it's going to do when it lands, but I think just the process of getting there in and of itself is absolutely
unbelievable,
mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's wild. I know that there's not direct benefits soon, but like just the fact that like science and math can get us that far, and like just think about the insane amount of calculations you'd have to make just to figure out how to get it on the right trajectory to somewhere that is 14 light minutes away. That's just absurd.
Even just to crash in the right spot, let alone to be able to land the dang thing.
Right. And then to account for, there's this atmosphere, and how is that going to affect it? And it's an atmosphere for a different planet that we have never been to.
Man, there's so many cool things, and I think and
you gotta send me this video, and you gotta put it in our show notes. By the way, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I will 100%. As soon as we're done recording, you have to watch this. It is so wild just to think that it's not like the crazy thing about this, Nick. It's not even in theory. Like, this is how the last rover landed. And like, we're landing a much more complicated device, but it's using the exact same thing because it worked. It's so cool. I don't know. I love it so much. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. If you enjoyed the show, you can support us at patreon.com/TYWSAP. We don't have a whole lot on there. I have a few ideas, and we'll do a little bit more, but
we'll get to reward tiers eventually, but for now it's just to support the show. Yeah.
And honestly, though, the thing that you can do the most to support the show is just to share it with a friend. You can go give us whatever it is on Apple Podcasts that people say. I don't even care about that. Just share it with a friend. You don't have to do anything on stupid Apple Podcasts. If you want to, also, you can follow us on any of the social medias out there. Starting to do a little bit more of that. We're at TiWasap.
No, I believe we're on at TiWasap, like you said, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Anything that I'm missing.
You can also check us out at TiWasap.com. Nick, thank you for potting with me.
You're welcome. This has been the year we started the podcast. Thank you for listening.
And we did it.
We did it. Hey, wait, do we have a parlor?